Welcome to The Third Story. I'm Leo Sidran. Today's conversation features restaurateur Gabriel Stulman. Since 2005, Stulman has been the man behind 8 successful restaurants in New York City, most of them in the West Village. In 2012, Esquire magazine named him Restaurateur of the Year. I've known Gabe for a long time and seen his operation grow firsthand. For a short time, my wife, Amanda, even worked at one of his restaurants in the Village. But I never really had a chance to sit down with him and get the story. What did he see as the essential skills and talents behind opening successful restaurants? How are they similar to the skills required in any creative field? And what is his life really like? In 2008, he opened the first in a series of restaurants in the Village with a team of friends, many of whom had gone to college together at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. The place, Joseph Leonard, became both a neighborhood favorite spot in the West Village and also a destination. By the time he opened the next one across the street, called Jeffrey's Grocery, the New York Times took notice and nicknamed Gabe's scene Little Wisco, short for Little Wisconsin. When he was still living in Wisconsin, Stulman worked at the now legendary, in some minds, and sadly departed Café Momar, a place that was at the center of several wonderful scenes in Madison. Although he describes growing up in a big Moroccan Jewish family that loved to entertain, it was at Café Momar that he really came into contact with the world of restaurants and bars, and he loved it. The sense of community and camaraderie, the pace and energy, and he also loved seeing the owners, a married couple, bring their kids into the bar, integrate family life with business life. He was seduced. I'll take a quick moment here to simply say that I was also seduced by that same place. I was in Madison at that time, and I performed regularly at the cafe. For a few years, I actually lived above it. I met my wife there. It was a real part of my personal history, and I remember Gabe when he was working behind the bar at Momar. I remember he had a lot of swagger and a lot of passion, and I remember when he left to move to New York. He moved with the goal of opening his own bar, using Café Momar as a kind of a reference, a starting point for his own vision. A nice dream, you might say. The incredible thing is at the age of 25, 2 years after showing up in New York, he opened a fantastic restaurant called the Little Owl. How did he pull that off? The year my wife and I moved to New York in 2005, we were walking down the street in the Lower East Side, and a voice from down the block yelled, "Hey, Madison!" And it was Gabe. He told us that he was about to open the Little Owl, and I couldn't believe it. And for a time, it became one of my favorite places in the city. His natural ability to comfortably operate in that scene at such a young age was kind of stunning to me. And his growth was staggering. He opened 6 restaurants in 3 years with his Happy Cooking Hospitality group, all of them successful, all well regarded. This month seems to be the in-the-field recording month for the Third Story podcast. Last time we were sitting on a corner terrace in Paris, this time huddled in the back corner of Stulman's Bar Sardine, next to the kitchen in the late afternoon. At times you hear people or music in the background, pots and pans, and the general buzz of kitchen prep, the coffee machine. While we talked, he interacted with his staff, various people who wandered in, and greeted his wife and son who happened to come in to visit him. You can subscribe to the podcast at third-story.com, follow me on Twitter at Leo Sidran, or on Facebook, The Third Story with Leo Sidran. The conversation starts with me showing him a pen that I happened to find in my house the morning of our conversation. Written along the side of the pen was the logo for the now-defunct Café Momar in Madison. As I was leaving, I grabbed a pen, and It's totally...
Oh my god, really?
I can't believe I grabbed it.
How do you even have ink still in this?
It writes beautifully. I thought about giving it to you, but I can't, because
no, you can't. You need to hold on to that.
It's too precious.
Look, I honestly think your history at Café Momar might be longer and richer than mine, because, I mean, when was the first time you played there? What year?
I played at Café Momar in 1994.
Yeah, you got me beat.
But
this is your pen.
But you took it with you. You took it on the road.
But you win. You beat me. You have your first performance at Momar predating my first day of work at Momar.
Well,
by 5 solid years.
Yeah, I was a kid.
And what was the first time your father played there?
The same time. No, the same time.
Same show?
Same time. Yeah, same time. Yeah, I remember when we went down there for the first time. Somebody took us to Café Momar.
Did you grow up in Madison?
Yeah. But this is about you. I'm here to talk about you. So, can you do me a favor and just paint the picture of where we are right now and tell me where we're sitting? Tell me about the corner where we're sitting right now.
We're on the corner of West 4th and West 10th Street in the West Village of Manhattan. We are in currently my round 2 iteration of this establishment, which has a wonderful roller coaster history of creative idea, rapid decline and fall off, and then rebirth. So today it's called Bar Sardine, and it's our total American gastropub with a menu that has, I'd say, a greater sophistication and international influences culinarily than, we're a hell of a lot more than just wings and nachos.
So, and was this the 5th restaurant to open?
The 5th and 7th, if you will.
Yeah.
It started as the 5th, and when it started was Chez Sardine, which was our very inauthentic, like Hunter S. Thompson, Gonzo style white boy version of an izakaya. And I call it all those things because it was completely born out of the culinary vision of the chef of Fedora, a guy named Mehdi Brunet Benkritli. And he's the chef of Fedora, and he used to always run these editions that were, had a lot of crudo or sashimi elements to it, and a lot of, raw or barely cured fish. And he wanted to take that and sort of take Japanese cuisine, which is something that a lot of us love to eat, and give his version of it. Now, he's never worked in a Japanese restaurant in his life. He's not Japanese. None of the people that we hired in our first kitchen had ever worked in a Japanese restaurant, and none of them were Japanese. And so all it was a bunch of people that love raw fish. Let's come up with our weird versions of it. And so it was really quirky stuff, like a beef tartare hand roll with, uni on top, a salmon head that's been marinated in miso, and then you got to add the Canadian element of like maple syrup. So you got this miso maple smoked salmon head, and just like a bunch of like combination of raw and cooked. And it went really well, and we got a lot of really amazing reviews, and we were booked a month to the date. 2-hour waits, de rigueur for about 8 months. But looking back, I think Chez Sardine was very, very niche, and it's almost like, I don't know, I wonder if it's better to use a music analogy given you or a film analogy, because they both, I think, resonate. I'm gonna go with
either way, and I think it'll translate.
I'm gonna go with film.
Okay.
It's like an amazing movie that somebody tells you about. Oh my God, have you seen Whiplash? Great, we'll bridge
Bring them together. I like it.
Right? Have you seen Whiplash? Oh no, I haven't seen it. Oh my God, it's fucking amazing. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. You go see Whiplash. Or I went and saw Whiplash. I fucking loved it. I don't know, have you seen it?
I have not yet seen it.
A lot of people said it was great. I watched it. Call me part of the masses. I thought it was a fantastic film. I fucking loved it. I don't really plan on watching it again anytime soon.
Yeah.
I don't need to see it again, and I loved it, right? I think Chez Sardine was that. It was a restaurant that everybody talked about, and then everybody came, and they ate, and they experienced it. One time. A few people decided to watch it a second time or a third time, but it's not a movie like, for me, anything James Bond, particularly Daniel Craig's versions, like Casino Royale, or like the Bourne movies with, Matt Damon. Like, I could literally catch them at any point, and I am stuck, and I'll just watch the rest of it. So I've probably seen Casino Royale 50 fucking times.
So for you, the exercise of opening a restaurant or a business is, in your mind, sort of like creating the James Bond equivalent.
Hopefully.
Something you can come back to.
This is where music works better than the film for what I try to create. And I'll make that analogy in a moment. But I think the challenge of Chez Sardine was everybody came there, everybody experienced it. And everyone walked away saying, that was awesome. I loved what I just ate. But it wasn't immediately calling to you of, I gotta go back and eat that salmon head. I gotta go back and eat that cured salmon with crunchy rice and, monkfish liver. You know, you're like, well, I mean, it was fucking amazing, but like, I don't need it. You know, and so the music analogy of this whole conversation would be a summer hit, right? And I like to think recent pop culture, blurred lines, right? I listened to that song all last summer with the rest of the world. I loved it. Catch me shaking my ass to that song. Catchy beat, fan of Pharrell, him and Robin Thicke laid it down. Good times, right? And that made me move. Radio and pop culture played that to death.
Yes.
And I enjoyed it for months. And if it comes on right now, probably want to skip the track. It's not timeless, right? Whereas, like, I can listen to Beastie Boys' License to Ill, cover to cover. I can listen to De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising. I can listen to Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest. I can listen to Things Fall Apart by The Roots. Black on Both Sides, or Black on Black by Mos Def. Like, I can listen to these albums constantly. They came out 15 years ago. I can still play the whole album, right? And that's what I try to create with our restaurants. And so I think Joseph Leonard and all of our other restaurants, to a lot of people, have that resonance. That was the goal. An album that you can listen to many times a week for years, for decades. I think Chez Sardine, in its first iteration, was more like, that was an awesome summer hit. I fucking played that. I listened to it. I had fun. I don't need to listen to it anymore. I don't want to listen to it anymore. And what we've tried to turn it into is more of a timeless album.
See, I like that we've already kind of hit on this analogy between music and creating restaurants like you do, because I've been thinking about what your role is in what the equivalent is in music, and it seems to me that it's the role of a producer, because you're not in the kitchen.
I'm not.
There's a lot of things that you're not doing, and yet all of your businesses, from my point of view, have a stamp about them. They have an attitude, and they have a sort of a feeling about them that's common, and it's the same thing when you listen to great producers.
Yeah. You know when you're listening to a Pharrell track.
Absolutely. But he plays a lot. But even if you listen to like a Rick Rubin record or something where the guy doesn't play anything anymore, but he still puts his attitude and his approach on it. Certainly a Pharrell thing. The sound, the attitude, the feeling, the atmosphere is there. And, you know, I have to admit that what you do is mysterious to me in a certain way, even though I've seen you do it, I mean, literally since you were in college, from sitting behind a bar to moving to New York and opening your first restaurant and seeing it happen, and yet it almost looks invisible. If you had to write down what the skill set is that makes somebody good at this,
I would try to distill it, which is be willing to make decisions quickly, be comfortable with your decisions being wrong and failing, and then work swiftly to fix them. That's what I do. I'm willing to make decisions. I'm a very fucking decisive person.
Yeah.
I would rather make a decision quickly and it be wrong than take a month and make the right decision over more time.
Yeah.
Because I don't like sitting around and waiting. And I believe that it's imperative to analyze, digest, and regurgitate rapidly, which is kind of like a metaphor for my entire university education. You know, I worked 5 nights a week at Momar while going to school full time. So basically what that meant was my approach to studies looked something like in school all day, finish classes, go work all night, leave the bar at 3 in the morning, go to the library, pop some Ritalin or some shit, and then try to write a paper between the hours of 3 and 5 a.m. or 6, sleep for 2 hours, and then go to class. I compacted and compressed all of my studies, and everything was just a exercise of short-term learning and short-term memory, which is, you know, you think about taking an order for a group of 6 people without a notepad. Yeah, I can remember all 6 of your appetizers, entrees, side dishes, and drink orders just by you telling me. I can remember it for about 3 to 4 minutes.
So you became good at sort of just keeping the information long enough.
I became good at rapidly devouring a tremendous amount of information quickly, distilling it, analyzing it, breaking it down, and then regurgitating my own opinion of it quickly, whether retention was there or not. And that's what I do now. Is like, I try to take a bunch of reports, whether it's, numerical statistics of how the restaurant performed, or a manager's like write-up of last night's problem, or, a construction issue and a breakdown from a plumber and electrician, like whatever it may be. I take everybody's information and I make a quick decision on it. Sometimes my decisions cost me more money because they're wrong.
But they're fast.
But we move forward.
Yeah.
We're constantly in motion.
So, you talk about the time in Madison at college, and obviously it was very formative for you. It was a very
instrumental.
You're not originally from Wisconsin. You actually spent a short amount of time there. But once again, that was obviously a period of time that was so significant to you in terms of kind of developing your vision for what you wanted to do. What was it about that time?
Wow. I mean, that's a really complex question, or the question's direct, the answer's complex, which is, it was kind of everything about what I found in the hospitality industry began to speak to things that I found value in.
You worked at this great place, Cafe
I worked
Momar.
at this great place. There was a lot of things that I found at Cafe Momar. First of all, I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I went to University of Wisconsin. I intentionally chose to go somewhere where I didn't know anybody. I wanted to start over, and the best way to start over was where you don't know anyone. So that's one of many reasons that took me to Wisconsin. I grew up in a very close family, and I grew up in a family that entertained all the time, Moroccan Jewish, Passover meant 30 people in the house, all the aunts and uncles. I always had to give up my bedroom for aunt and uncle to stay in,
So you weren't trying to get away from your family necessarily?
No, I was not trying to get away from my family. I was trying to get away from everything else. But we constantly had people over, and we were constantly entertaining. And so what I found in working at Cafe Momar was community and family in a series of concentric circles. I immediately found very close friends and family in my colleagues. And that was cool. We became a unit. I became a team. Me and the other bartenders and the cocktail servers, we bonded. We were on a softball team together. We went out together. We worked all these hours together. We were our own team of selling and breaking records and this and that. And it was I was a part of a team, which, I hadn't had since I was in high school and I was on a sports team. So I was on a team again. I found a team in my coworkers. The other thing that was amazing was, all of a sudden I found another second layer of community, which was with all the other restaurants and bars. So other bartenders and waiters and chefs would come to Cafe Momar when they weren't working, and then all of a sudden I started to meet people who were saying, oh yeah, I bartend here, I cook here. When you're off, come and visit me. When you're off, come and visit me. And all of a sudden that opened up a wider group of friends and family and circles, and this second layer of community. Everywhere I went, it was like, hey, how you doing? Oh, hey, how you doing? How you doing? And we took care of each other, would always give them great service and treatment and, gifts and stuff when they came to Momar, and the same thing would happen when I'd go to visit them. And then there was this third layer of community, which was, I felt a part of the physical community of Madison. Yeah. I became to know regulars who were not my college friends, were not my colleagues, and did not work in other restaurants. They were just people who were Madison locals, who hung out at Cafe Momar. And you got to know people who had house accounts and got to know people's lives. Oh, how you doing? How's, you got a new job. How's your kid doing? And I found all these layers of community. And they really spoke to me. And that was all happening simultaneously while I observed, sad to say today, Craig and Shannon have long been divorced. And sadly, their marriage didn't last. But when I started working for them, they had 2 kids. And their kids were ages 2 and 4. And I bartended for this family for 4 years. So when I left, their kids were 6 and 8. And I felt, to a large extent, I watched their kids grow up in front of me. And I saw a relationship at the time. Shannon and Craig were extremely close and had a really strong relationship at the years I worked with them. I grew up in a home where both my mother and father worked full-time, different careers. They'd go different directions in their cars in the morning. They'd come home at different times at night. And we had a lot of dinners at home that, weekday dinners, or sometimes it would be my brother, my sister, and I, and neither of our parents. We were always all together for Shabbat every weekend. But what I saw with Craig and Shannon was a couple who worked together. I'd see Craig come in and put his son on the bar while he did beverage inventory. I'd see Shannon take her daughter and sit her on the kitchen counter while she did things in the kitchen. And I was like, wow, man, this is like the dream. Look at this. They're married, they work together, they're with their kids all the time. Craig would go home every night, presumably to have dinner with the family, and then he'd come back to the bar at like 11 o'clock at night, do a sweep of the room for an hour, high five regulars, give this guy a Guinness on me, give this guy a Jameson on the house, have a glass of wine for her from me. And he was just like, come in, he'd shake a bunch of hands, give a bunch of hugs and kisses. He was like the fucking royalty, man.
Yeah.
Gave everybody some things, high-fived everybody, did a sweep, and then left. It's like, man, this guy's like a rock star. And I wanted that life. I wanted to work with my wife. I wanted my kid to come and visit me at work. I have that life now.
Yes, you do.
My wife works with me. She visits with my son, and I was totally drawn to all of it. The culture of you could create a place that was part of the community, it was a part of people's lives. You could build a place that created its own family and its own community, and it could enrich people, and there was room for education and growth. And I think I fell in love with all those things, and I wanted, at a certain point, I was like, I want to do this. I want to open my own restaurant.
I'm glad that you mentioned this thing about community also, because you have set up a network of businesses that are in a neighborhood. I mean, some would argue sort of the ultimate New York neighborhood.
I would argue that. I'm biased as hell. But, yeah, I think the West Village, I mean, one thing that draws me so strongly to it is you're in Manhattan, one of the largest cities in the world, arguably the capital of the world, right? And there's this pocket here that has a small town feel in a big city. There's no skyscrapers in this neighborhood. There are some trees that line the blocks. There are brownstones. And you see the same people walking their dogs and you wave to them every day. The same person at the cafe. A lot of independently owned businesses. There's this has a neighborhood feel a lot more than, Tribeca or the Upper East or Financial District.
Well, I think that's one of the things that was so mysterious to me about and sort of shocking to me about discovering where you had landed here when I first reconnected with you, because New York can seem so impenetrable, even within the service industry. I mean, just the fact that you might move to New York and work in a restaurant does not connect you in the way it might in Madison to a community of other service, because there are only so many restaurants of a sort of similar scope in Madison. But in New York, there are a lot.
Thousands.
But somehow you came here with that mentality. So what did you do when you moved here?
I moved here with the goal of, I need to move to New York and I need to open my own bar. Started off with, I wanted to open a bar. I didn't think I wanted to open a restaurant. And it took me a while to find a job. There's this fucked up opinion that a lot of operators have in New York that there's no other city in the world that has busy restaurants or bars and high standards. And if you don't have New York experience, then you cannot work here. And it's literally asinine opinion that a lot of operators have. And so I probably put 100 resumes out, and nobody called me back because my resume said Madison, Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin. And I would look at these clowns bartending, and I'd be like, I can move 5 times faster than that person. I can make better drinks than that person. I come from a place that pushed me harder. Are you serious? That's what New York experience gets you?
But that's an interesting thing. I came from a place that pushed me harder, too, because I think we should look at that briefly before we move on. Obviously, there was something in the values of service in Wisconsin and in Madison that you recognized as being different and unusual.
All right, here's a misconception. We are constantly said, oh, we have this Midwestern sense of hospitality. That's like a half-truth. I think what Wisconsin does insanely well is there is sincerity. There is genuine warmth in greetings and caring. What New York does really well is intense details, education, precision, expertise. What we try to do is take both of those. I think we have a more detailed sense of technical service than a lot of the places in Madison. But we try to bring the warmth.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to bring, that intersection. I try to take... I can take that for you.
Who said that?
I said that.
Who you?
The person who needs those paychecks.
Oh,
For real.
Oh, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm okay. I never saw you.
It's all right.
How you doing?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
That's good.
Do you want me to sign for that?
Oh, you want to talk on it? Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Y'all have a coffee and tea?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's nice.
It is nice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day.
You have a wonderful one, too.
So when you got here,
Apologies.
None at all. That's the texture. That's why we're doing it here. When you got to New York, you were talking about how if you didn't have New York experience.
So nobody hired me. Eventually, the first place that hired me was a restaurant. And so I was trying to get jobs at all these bars, and none of these bars would hire me. And then I eventually got a job at a restaurant. And it was the first time I'd really bartended at a place that food was the first priority. A nightlife environment was not a priority. And what I found for the first time at a restaurant called Hearth was a different type of connection with guests. Instead of the quick, what do you want? You want an old-fashioned, you want a sidecar, you want a blah, blah, let me make your cocktail, here you go. This was two people would sit in bar stools in front of me for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And they would have dinner. And I would curate a whole meal. Let's talk about your appetizer, your mid-course, your entree, your dessert. I was pushed to know ingredients and try ingredients that I had never tried. I was demanded of me to study wine, and I began to like really immerse myself in wine, and needed to pair wines with certain dishes and learn all of those nuances. And I found, well, wait a second, I'm getting done with work at midnight instead of that's actually the woman who interviewed me for that first job.
Oh.
She now works on our team.
Well done.
That is Elena Silva. She gave me that first bartending job here. And so I found, I was like, wow, wait a second. I love this. It's civilized. There's a sense of decorum. Holy shit. I'm eating this amazing food. It's not pizza and chicken wings. I'm eating lamb saddle that's roasted and served with fava beans and, hen of the woods mushrooms. And I'm learning about new food. I'm learning about new wine. I'm understanding why this wine goes with this dish. I'm learning finer details of service. And I'm spending 2 hours getting to know people. And what I'm finding is that I'm making as much or more money doing this kind of service, because instead of two people buying two $13 drinks and spending $26 and leaving me a $4 tip and coming back every half hour, I'm having two people spend $200 and leave me a $40 tip over 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I'm learning. It's tastier.
Yeah.
And it's totally civilized. And I fell in love, and I said, well, wait a second. What if I take all of the things I love about a bar, all the things I love about working in a restaurant, because Hearth is a little bit of a conservative restaurant, and try to combine them and say, have a little bit more casual and a little bit more loosey vibe, but have sophisticated food. Play Jay-Z and Kanye and Curtis Mayfield. Have the level of food that Hearth serves, but don't wear the uniform.
But you went through also this little middle period with Little Owl and Market Table.
I wouldn't call that a middle period. I call that the beginning.
That's the beginning.
Well, that was my first two restaurants.
Yeah.
I curated and created my vision of that ideal restaurant with the Little Owl.
Yeah.
All that is a victim of, being young. having a 50-50 business partner without having a good lawyer, not having the business acumen to talk about worst case scenarios when you start your partnership. We were both young and ambitious, and we only thought like, this is going to be great, this is going to be awesome, this is going to be awesome. So we only talked about, what do we do with the profits, and you run the kitchen, I run the front. We never even talked about how do we do conflict resolution. And when you don't talk about worst case scenarios, then all of a sudden when you start to have conflict, you now need to figure out how do you resolve these things. And in a 50-50 partnership, there is no resolution. You're two fucking rams with your horns locked.
Yeah.
I get it my way because I own half. I get it my way because I own half. Okay, so either somebody gives in, and if the same person's always giving in, that will build up to resentment over time, or people don't give in. And we ended up in a situation where it was just like, look, I'm gonna be happier. Like I could keep my 50% of these two restaurants and hate coming to work every day.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. And I'm making plenty of cash. I'll be wealthy and miserable. You can't kick me out. Or I could leave the money and the popularity, cash in.
Because those restaurants were successful.
They were. And I could try to do this on my own without a partner. And it was riskier. But to me, that was the only option. I literally hated going to work every day at a certain point. My business partner and I did not like each other.
And how did it start? You started on the scene sort of together, or?
Yeah, we both worked at a restaurant in Tribeca. He was the executive chef and I was a bartender. That restaurant went out of business. And we were like, hey, you don't got a job, I don't got a job. I want to open a place. He wanted to open a place. So we opened a place.
But in relatively short order, how long was it? 2-3 years?
Before I left the two restaurants? 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
You came to blows. You came to despise each other.
Yeah.
And you sort of regrouped at that point.
I was fortunate that the valuation of two successful restaurants created a situation in my life that I'd never had before. You know, when I moved to New York, I was broke and didn't have a job. So
it's a rough combination.
I couldn't afford to do anything in New York. I had no money and I had no job. So I would, be the kind of guy who took a flask into a bar and ordered a Coca-Cola and poured my cheap, $10 hangover whiskey into it under the table because I needed to be, frugal about drinking. I could not afford to eat at any restaurants, so, I ate street meat all the time. So I had a ton of time and no money. Then I went into another phase where I worked 7 days a week, built my own restaurants, had plenty of money, and I had no free time, which is equally shit. Well, now I can afford restaurants and I can afford nice things, but I work 7 days a week. And then I sold my shares, and I was 27 years old. And what I had for the first time was I had plenty of money, and I had all the free time in the world. But I was young. I didn't have enough money that was going to make me last for... I had enough money that I could have coasted for 4 or 5 years. So I took a year off, and I traveled a bunch, and I fell in love with the girl that I'm now married to. And I dreamed up my dream restaurant, taking from all of the lessons of the successes and what I thought were failures or issues of the Little Allen Market Table. I took the money that I had in that year off and I experienced all the restaurants that I could not experience when I was poor and I could not experience when I didn't have free time.
Yeah.
I went to all those restaurants and I took notes and I dreamed up what was my new and improved version. And that's Joseph Leonard. And then I was able to then open it on my own.
What were some of the things that you were thinking about when you put that restaurant together? And at what point did you reconnect with the Wisconsin scene?
The Wisconsin scene connected with me. A beautiful thing. I wanted to open up a casual, everyday bistro. I was inspired by the places of France. I was inspired here in New York by Balthazar, but I wanted something miniature. I wanted something very personal. I wanted a place that was open all day, every day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, that was affordable, that you could experience different meal periods, and you could you wanted to have a coffee in or you wanted to have a whiskey in. And when I finally got to opening it, you know, a handful of my friends from college had independently on their own moved to New York. And they were working at different restaurants and bars in New York. And I just reached out to them and I was like, hey, I'm opening my place. I don't know if you're happy. And what happened when I opened Joseph Leonard was all my college friends, like 7 or 8 of them. I mean, I knew them all when we were part of the restaurant community of Madison. They were here, they were working at different restaurants, and I was like, you know, I basically put a flare out. It's like, I'm opening. I need my friends. And they all came. And we opened up this place together, and it was with the most pure ambition. And everybody just wanted to be a part of making this great bistro, and we did. And it connected with a lot of people, and it was really soulful. That sort of begat all of the other restaurants.
Did you have ambition to grow like this?
Yes. I knew out of the gate I wanted multiple restaurants. When I opened the Little Owl, I wanted multiple restaurants. I was inspired by the Danny Meyers and the Keith McNallys and the Blue Ribbon guys. And, you know, you even think about Madison back when I was there. You know, you think about the Berg brothers and, you know...
Henry,
yeah. I mean, I don't want to eat the same food every night, but I do want to eat every night. And I like different things. And so I want to always open places that speak to my different enjoyments.
I hear you walking the tightrope of the Wisconsin thing, and I know that at a certain point you sort of were branded Little Wisco, you embraced it, now you've had to kind of rebrand it in a certain way.
Exactly. Interesting, the rebranding actually goes back to the beginning. When Joseph Leonard was running in its infancy, it was like 90% my college friends on staff. So it felt Wisconsin.
And conveniently you had Kettle of Fish,
which is proud flag-bearing Wisconsin.
Yeah, across the street from your...
Across the street. Then we opened Jeffrey's Grocery, which convenient. We had 2-hour waits and lines out the door at Joseph Leonard. And then I saw, you know, we had more demand than we had space for. I saw a place across the street with a sign that said store for rent by owner. It seemed appropriate. It was right there. My then girlfriend and I lived above Joseph Leonard. We saw it from our bedroom window. We saw it from behind the bar. We thought, let's go build something there. And so we went to open that. And when we did that, we got even more Wisconsin people. Your wife, Amanda, and other Wisconsinites. And that then turned into Fedora, and more people that just graduated started looking us up. And we started
that was the
developing...
funny thing. At that period, when I would go back to Madison, you could walk into any good restaurant and somebody there would tell you that they were about to move to New York to work for you. Whether or not that was true, there was this sort of sense that I can leave and I can move to New York.
I can go to New York and I can find... And that's what started... There started being a couple-year period where that... I mean, it was nuts. People were walking in our doors and saying, I just graduated. I worked at this place. I'm ready when you're ready. You call and I'll come. And it was so... pure. And then what ended up happening was there was a New York Times profile written on me. And a writer named Alex Williams was having a conversation. We were just talking where he was like, man, you got all these people that you went to college with, all these Wisconsinites, all in this really small area. You know, it's like you've created, you know, like Little Italy, Little Wisconsin. And it caught on immediately. And people in the blogosphere and people in the neighborhood and the rest of that, everybody thought it was cute. Little Wisco, right? And we thought it was cool too. And we were like, yeah, man, we're proud of that. And it made sense because the percentage of people that had Wisconsin ties that worked in our restaurants made up the majority. And the geographical location was like 1.5 blocks. So it was like a little concentration of Little Wisconsin, of which the Kettle of Fish was right in the middle. And so it was pitch perfect.
Yeah.
What has changed since then? We've doubled the size of our company. We have 2 restaurants that are not in this one block. We have expanded by 10 blocks in 2 different directions. So one thing is, it doesn't seem representative anymore to say that it is Little Wisconsin for our restaurant group, because is our restaurant in Chelsea part of the pocket? Not really. So is that Little Wisco? Well, it is and it isn't. Well, what if we ever want to open a restaurant in Brooklyn? Is that geographically it's not, but like
conceptually,
emotionally
yeah.
it is. Whereas the first moniker had geographic connotations to it. The other thing that changed is there was a, dilution of the majority just by sheer numbers, Great, when we had 9 employees and 7 of them went to college with me, and then when we had 70 employees and 35 or 40 of them had Wisconsin ties, now all of a sudden we were a company that we had 250 employees and only like 50 of them had Wisconsin ties. It didn't seem representative anymore. And at the time we were thinking about, well, all right, let's think about our future now. Let's think about, what if we ever open a restaurant in another state? What if we open a restaurant in Tribeca? What if we open a restaurant in Nolita? Does Little Wisconsin represent where we are right now? And the answer to that was, it doesn't represent us now anymore. And does it represent our future? Not completely.
And there's really nothing at this point that is automatically related to Wisconsin in the food. So
there never was. There never was anything in the food that was related to it.
But it was hospitality. It was really about the attitude.
It was about the warmth and the sincerity. 100%.
What was the reaction of all of these other non-Wisconsin people to sort of being considered part of a Wisconsin identity?
I think everybody embraced it. Everybody thought it was totally fine and cool and fun. And I don't think anybody gave it too much thought to it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody thought like, oh, I'm from California. What do you mean I'm part of Little Wisco? I don't think anybody thought of it that way. It was just like, all right, that's the name of the company. I get it. It's a bunch of guys that went to college together. But as we grew, and it was, some of the managers of our restaurants are not from Wisconsin.
Sure.
Like, some of the chefs are not from, it just doesn't represent us today the way that it did when it was coined.
So you talk about this period in your life when you had plenty of money and no time.
Little owl days.
And after you sort of regrouped, quickly you opened 6 restaurants.
Yeah.
Obviously,
perhaps a little too many too fast.
Let's talk about that.
It's difficult to open a restaurant. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of hours. We built 6 restaurants in 3.5 years. And of the caliber of restaurants that I like to believe our restaurants are, and that I think most people think that they are, they require a lot of management. I think that we deliver high-end, first-class restaurants. I mean, basically, I feel like 5 years of my life, my head was down.
Yeah.
I worked 80, 90, 100-hour weeks for 5 years. If I didn't work with you, I didn't see you. I literally lost every single friend that I had that did not work in our company. Anytime you called me, I wasn't available. I couldn't go to your birthday. I couldn't go to your dinner party. I couldn't go to your holiday party. I was working. The only way you saw me is if you came to visit me.
Yeah.
And here's my wife and son visiting. Pitch perfect.
Hi.
Hello, Simon.
Hold on.
If they're too loud, you let us know.
I will tell you if there's too much, but it is kind of appropriate because I think this is just what you were getting to.
This is exactly what I was talking about. I want this in my life. The ability for them to come visit.
And if people didn't visit you, you didn't see them. And so your life had to be set up so that the people closest to you could come see you.
And so, I think that in retrospect, I let my ambition drive me, and I still will let my ambition drive me, but I think I'm a little bit more comfortable in what I have achieved, that I don't need to do everything today.
Yeah.
I can take a little bit more time, and I need a little bit more time off. Also, the amount of continued attention that restaurants need to be long-term successful is difficult to give if I keep opening something new. So we're in our first pause period, and it's only been 2 years since my last opening. And in that time, 10 months ago, I reinvented this restaurant to such an extent, you might as well consider this a new restaurant as of 10 months ago.
Well, it's physically different.
It's
the menu's different.
Full gut. Yeah.
So what is a day like for you? What does your day look like?
They're full right now. Right now I am the interim general manager at Sardine. We're in a transition period. So, for the last 10 weeks, my schedule looks like I wake up at about 8 a.m. I go downstairs and Gina and Simon are already up. Have coffee with them, and I head into work by about 9 a.m. I usually start my day at Jeffrey's Grocery, where I'll have breakfast, and I'll start to have meetings with either my director of operations, my director of HR, my director of events, director of PR. We've got a whole bunch of director heads now. That's what happens when you fucking grow. Director of finance. We've got a big fucking company now.
Yeah.
I've got 7 directors, right? I have meetings with them all morning. Every single one of them, like rotations. Then I usually get over here by about noon to Sardine. And I start handling a lot of, my email correspondence with all the different general managers and beverage directors and chefs. And then I jump into service meeting every day here at 3:30.
Because you're managing here.
Because I'm managing here. And then I am the maitre d' from 5:30 at night until midnight or 2 a.m. And then I go home and everyone's asleep and I crawl into bed and we do that again. And
so do you
my Monday through Friday, they're about 15-hour days.
You can go a stretch of a few days or a week when you don't set foot in the other locations?
Currently, that is the absolute case. Well, I step foot in the other locations during the day. So Fedora I get to see at night because it's next door. So I pop in and out at night. Jeffries and Joseph Leonard I go see during the day. I've taken one of our directors and planted them at Momar to keep an eye on it for me. And I've taken another director and planted them at Perla.
Which are the sort of satellite locations.
Yes, but also just because if I'm working 5 nights a week here, I can keep an eye on 4.
Yeah.
But the ones that are a little bit satellite, it's harder to just make that a part of my walk.
How do you deal with the sort of social expectation of drinking on the job?
That's a non-issue for me. I just don't.
You just don't do it.
I mean, I believe that there are ways to socially drink and keep it minimal. So, when I was a 21-year-old bartender, I would drink a bottle of Jameson during a shift.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. It's unhealthy. Now, I'm very comfortable pouring somebody else a shot and just being like, no, go ahead.
Yeah.
You take it.
Yeah.
And then when I want to have something, what I'll do is I'll take a shot glass and pour 1 ounce of rosé in it. I can have 10 shots of rosé, and that's like the equivalent of a glass and a half of wine.
Yeah.
And to me, the social aspect is all that I'm after. I'm after the camaraderie. I want to be mentally sharp,
of course,
at night, and I want to be fresh in the morning. I don't want to be waking up with a hangover. Like, I got shit to do. I enjoy my sobriety. I've been at this for a while. I mean, I'm 34 now. I started working in restaurants at 18. I had years of my life that I was drunk at the end of every shift. I got it out of my system.
Yeah.
I'm good. Like, I don't need it. I don't want it, actually. I like to drink wine with dinner. And then as far as the social aspect, to me, my role is to be sort of like the ringleader of the party. That doesn't mean that I need to be in the party.
Mm-hmm. When I asked you what is it that you do, you talked about making decisions quickly and, looking at the information and responding. But obviously you could have opened a lot of different kinds of places and you had to have a kind of a creative vision. Was this your creative vision? Was this the process of collaborating creatively with other people? How do you manage that process?
I would say the seeds generally start with me. When we talk about interior design, that is primarily me. When we talk about the concept development, I work very closely with a core team. A guy named Matt Kevakis from Wisconsin,
right.
A guy named Jim McDuffie, Brian Bartles, and my wife Gina, and a guy named Luke Dirks. We work very closely together on bouncing around ideas. I love working with those guys because they have great vision and they have great ideas and they're insanely talented. And what my role is it's just like writing the papers, it's just like, doing it. I take all their ideas and then I distill and I try my best to spit out and be like, here's what I liked about your idea. We're going to do that point blank as is. On your idea, I want to make this adjustment to it. It's your idea with a slight modification, and then try to take all their ideas to grow.
Do you think that in order to stay alive, all of these businesses at some point are going to have to sort of reinvent themselves? Or do you think that it's possible to be timeless, like a timeless record or a timeless hit in the environment in New York?
I think both. So I hope that I hope and I believe Joseph Leonard has the type of vibe and feeling that I don't know that it needs to reinvent its identity or its culture. It just needs to keep it strong, and that takes a lot of work and effort. But I don't think that it needs to reinvent. I feel the same about Jeffrey's Grocery. But Jeffrey's Grocery had to reinvent itself to find its current identity.
Yes, it did, as did this place.
As did this place. I think this place might have found a rhythm that it's now timeless. I think Fedora has its vision solidified. I think Momar has been going through evolutions and will continue to. I think Perla is going through evolutions and will continue to. So some of them hit it on day one. Joseph Leonard and Fedora. Jeffrey's and Sardine took about a year. So it's both, is the answer to the question.
What do you think about the role of food and restaurants right now in pop culture? It's funny that you reference sort of the hip-hop of your youth as being the kind of the touchstone that you come back to say, well, have I opened the restaurant equivalent of 3 Feet High and Rising? You know, and today people take pictures of their meals and of the restaurants.
Too much. I don't understand. Like,
but you're in it. You're in that business. Though.
I'm in it. I think there's a part of restaurants that's gone too far. Part of pop culture that has gone too far. Like, trying to paint chefs as rock stars.
You don't see it.
Beyond me. Like, no, we're not rock stars. You know, stop trying to make us seem like we are. You know, you have these events with, like, people screaming, and let me introduce you, blah, blah, like, you know, bringing a guy on stage, and, like, a whole bunch of people, like, with their phones and, like, photograph, like, guy makes food. Fucking, come on. I think people need to chill out.
But it is interesting that the thing that turned you on about the whole lifestyle was seeing a family at the center of it, and understanding that that was like the most rock star thing for you in that way. Was I aspire to live like that, to have
it's
that.
It's amazing that Gene and Simon are here now.
Yeah.
Unplanned. To me, I think that we've gone a little bit too far with television programming. Too many cooking shows and competition have distorted this idea, you know, and you've got all these shows where it's, you know, cook this dish while one hand's tied behind your back and you've only got Skittles and make it gourmet in 30 seconds. What the fuck does that mean anything about you? You know, the other problem with a lot of the pop culture is I think it's deteriorating work ethic. You know, I bartended from the age of 18 till I was 25. That's 7 years working full-time, 5 and 6 nights a week and 50 and 60 hours a week from 18 to 25 before I even conceived of the notion of opening my own restaurant.
And even then, it actually seemed probably pretty radical to a lot of people.
It was radical to a lot of people. They were like, you're way too young. And I partnered with somebody who was 10 years my senior, 35, and had been doing it since he was 18. So there was like some balance in the chef partner. And, you know, today, you got people who are like, oh, I worked in restaurants. Well, you got some people, I never worked in restaurants. Oh, I want to do that because it seems cool. It's like, what do you... I don't believe I should be running, like, I shouldn't be the chief, you know, technical officer at a startup company because I think it's cool to do startups. I've never programmed or written code or anything. I probably shouldn't do that. I probably shouldn't, like, have my own fashion label. I haven't studied fashion. I haven't worked in it. Oh, I like clothes. What the fuck does that mean? Don't go open a fucking fashion company just because you like clothes. Oh, you like restaurants and it seems cool. It infuriates me that people think this industry is so remedial that anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And I think pop culture is making people feel that way. And it's cool, so more people want to do it. it's also deteriorating all sense of work ethic and loyalty. So now you've got this whole generation of people coming into this industry who they only want to work at places for 2 months to put it on their resume.
Do you think that you have a style in the way that you put these businesses together, that you run your business, of the way that...
I think we have a common thread of hospitality.
Yeah.
That question is probably better asked to not me, though. Do other people think we have a common thread? I hear it from other people that they do. So I think we do have a little bit of a stamp. Always working. Man, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to me. Are you kidding me? So good to see you, my man.
Likewise. This is the way we have to do it.
When are you performing next so I can come hear some music? Locally.
It's going to be in Brooklyn.
That's local. You travel internationally.
Yeah.
I'm talking local.
Local?
New York, 5 boroughs.
Couple of things in May 30th. I'm playing in Brooklyn, my music with my band.
Great.
At Bar Best, which is right around the corner from me, and it's a great
Can you send me an
place.
email?
Of course.
I would love to come. Gina, we're going. If Leo remembers to email me, we're going. I would love to, man.
It's on tape. It's on record.
Done.
Gabe, thank you so much, man.
Hey.
Well, there you have it. Gabe Stulman, restaurant guru, hip-hop fan, family man. I learned a lot. Who knew? 10 shots of rosé equals a glass and a half of wine. By the way, as you hear me mention at the end of the conversation, I'm playing a gig in Brooklyn next month in support of my new record, Mucho Leo, which comes out on Rope-A-Dope Records this Tuesday, April 28th. You can find it on iTunes or anywhere you like to buy music. Okay, I need to send Gabe and Gina a reminder about that gig, May 30th at Bar Best in Brooklyn.